So, Nick, as we make our way through the Spacer saga, as we go deeper down the timeline through the Mars Titan War, through the Titan Civil War, through the Frontier Wars, there's one aspect that's very much divorced from the proceedings. There's a big 800-pound gorilla in the room, and it's Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Because Earth is never really talked about or mentioned throughout any of the canon we published so far, any of the work we developed so far. And that is because Earth has turned inward and has violently done so. And the
Yeah.
rest of solar space is more than happy to let the 800-pound gorilla sleep
Yep.
because God help you if you wake it up.
Yep.
Now, Nick, tell me about the gorilla. How did Earth get this way?
Yeah. Earth has become basically isolationist and, like you said, inward thinking. And the reason for this is in the 21st century and a little bit into the 22nd century, but really especially in the 21st and early 22nd century, um, Earth went through what they call the collapse or the fall, which is basically another word for the collapse of industrial civilization. And this is something that when I started coming up with this idea, I was extrapolating off of trends that I saw happening nowadays, where it's like, oh, if we keep going on this route, industrial civilization is probably going to collapse in the next 100 years. No question. Maybe in 50 years. And basically the Earth of 2389, which is the like guidepost year for the Frontier Wars story that I've been working on for the longest, the one that I call the main story that we've talked about in the past. Earth of that year is kind of a far cry from what it is nowadays. There's been lots of sea level rise. There's been lots of environmental degradation. It's been sort of dialed back by what they call the community of Gaia. The community of Gaia was established in 2097, sort of at the crest of the wave of the fall, and basically was designed originally just as a sort of safeguarding mechanism, a stopgap mechanism, if you will, to prevent the utter collapse of Earth's biosphere and ecological diversity and so on, and just to sort of shore up the defenses against complete climate and ecological catastrophe. And it did that for a couple of centuries. But as with a bunch of other things in the Spacer Saga lore and the lore of solar space, there's a good bit of scope creep, to put a name on it, because just like I think we've talked probably at least briefly about Interplanetary Dynamics, which is the organization that runs Europa. Interplanetary Dynamics started off basically as an analog to like an interplanetary FedEx mixed with Amazon.
Sure.
Well, they became so powerful through the course of their regular business proceedings, they basically bought up an entire moon and became essentially a government in and of themselves, like an interplanetary government at that, and were able to influence politics in the ICA. Well, the community of Gaia, the COG as they call it, as I call it, basically rules Earth, most of Earth anyway. And they,
After the restoration of the biosphere, or at least the stabilization of the biosphere and the beginning of the restoration, perhaps, you have Earth, which is compared to the rest of the solar system, limitless with resources. And as we see in our own world, the nations with the most resources have the most power and can exert their will across the entire planet. The more resources you have, the stronger you are, the more you can do. And to me, the only thing that made sense, if you have like this planet that has limitless resources by comparison to, the solar space, the Mars, the moons of Jupiter, whatever, is that if they have a reason to turn inward, where the community of Gaia has become more than just an ecological preservation society, it turns the restoration of biosphere into an act of worship
yeah,
almost. And
it becomes a state religion. It becomes I think the word we sort of bounced around when we were discussing this before is ecofascism. It's
Yes.
it's turning the preservation of ecology and biosphere and so on into basically a state religion of a fascist regime, because it's not a fascist regime that's founded upon like racist ideology or expansionism. If anything, it's the opposite. It's basically saying, hey, we're all brothers and we need to, preserve this planet. And if you don't do so, we're going to throw you in a camp.
Yeah. You
You
know,
know,
God help you
so
if you step on a blade of grass.
yeah,
And it's it's really fascinating because that to me is a good justification for the earthens. I want to say humans, but there's
herons,
human. What's that?
herons or Gaians.
We'll say Gaians. That's a good justification for the Gaians to not want to take over the rest of the solar system, is because their god is the biosphere.
Yeah, they've
And
got everything they think they need.
the restoration of the biosphere is how they worship their god. And their god commands that they don't build rockets to go into space and you
Those
know,
rockets pollute.
the rockets pollute. So you have a society where you will own nothing and be happy, where you live in pristine cities and no one needs any money. And but if you pollute, they'll put you in a death camp.
Yeah, it's
Right,
basically the dark side of the Federation.
the darkest side of the Federation.
Yeah.
and and that makes a lot of sense. And I know we haven't found a spot for this yet, but I'm really wanting a story where, like, there's some inner solar meeting of different governmental leaders, and everyone's terrified of the Gaians. Everyone, because they're insane. They
I think I think at the when we were discussing this beforehand, you told me not to give away the ending, but I will give away one thing.
Go ahead.
Story that I sent you the other day, where there's basically is an interplanetary like peace talk, a peace conference on it's set on an orbital station above Callisto.
Okay.
And it's being hosted by the Alliance of Free Worlds. And one of the characters, the main character of the story, actually, I think, basically refers to Earth as a madhouse.
Yeah.
It's basically like, hey, we don't go to Earth unless there's like business that has to be attended to, and then we leave.
We don't go unless we are specifically invited.
It's
And we,
like you've seen Batman Begins, I assume.
yes.
You remember that line where the corrupt cop, like the fat corrupt cop, is being interrogated by Batman, and he's
Yeah.
asking him about the Narrows where Arkham is, and he says cops don't go there unless they're in force. That's basically Earth.
Yeah.
The rest of the solar system doesn't go to Earth unless they like have like bodyguards.
Yeah. And even then, you're specifically invited, and you're so thankful and gracious to your host, and you get the fuck out of there as soon as you can, because God help you if you step on a bug.
Litter.
Yeah. Don't step on the bug, whatever you do. Let the bug bite you. That you're better off. Yeah, you're gonna get Lyme disease. That's fine. Don't piss off the Gaians. Now, an aspect we developed in a previous talk was where there's sort of two camps. There's a smaller part of Earth where, and I don't know how big it is, but like you can almost, for easy number sake, say 80-20. 80% of the Earth is ruled by these Gaians, and 20% is kind of everyone else.
Yeah.
And
80% is the community of Gaia, 20% is the progressive order of Gaia, which
th-
is it sells itself as being like a more um, as the name implies, as the name suggests, it sells itself on being a more progressive minded
yeah,
move. But one thing that I was thinking about actually while we were discussing this in our warm up is what if there was some implication, say if we did a story about Earth, for example, what
yeah.
if there was an implication that the union of Gaia and the community of Gaia and the progressive order of Gaia had the same background?
Oh yeah, no,
Like,
definitely.
because again, I think when we talked about this before, a couple of days ago, the idea was that, oh well, the community of Gaia is basically Oceania from 1984,
Yeah,
and the progressive order of Gaia offers a convenient scapegoat an enemy for the government to point to and say, look, they're dangerous. They don't take it as seriously. This is what could happen to us if we don't take it seriously. And
Oh yeah.
and if anything, it would probably be an extension, maybe not a direct extension, but it's some you go back far enough in the hierarchy, and it's an extension of the community of Gaia.
Oh yeah. No, it's by design.
Yeah.
And you know, I I had a similar idea uh in this book I wrote called Liberation of Earth, where you have the Empire and you have the Rough Riders. The Rough Riders are the human rebels. The Empire is the the humans that are work for aliens. And but there's a directive put out to never kill the last rebel because a hopeful populace is an obedient populace. And that idea there
That's
was
straight out of Hunger Games.
there you go.
Straight out of Hunger Games. There's literally I haven't watched those movies or read the books, but there's a bit that was featured in like a montage video I once watched, like a montage video of dystopic sci-fi movies. And
Yeah.
there's a bit where what's the guy's name?
President Snow.
President Snow. Yeah, I know the character. I can't remember the actor's name.
Oh, Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland. That's right. Where Donald Sutherland is talking about how if you wanted to control the people with fear, you would not hold the Hunger Games. You would just round up a dozen people from each sector and kill them. But fear is not an effective way to
Yeah.
govern. Hope is, because you keep them hopeful enough so they keep coming back to you for more.
Yeah. But the difference here with the Pogs and the Cogs, where the Cogs rule most of the Earth, and you got the Pogs, they kind of rule a little bit of it, is I love the idea that there's bits of Christianity where it talks about how the Bible commands us to be good stewards of the earth, and it would make sense for the other faction to be what we would call, environmentalists today, just less murder. You
Mhm.
know, they're not quite so bloodthirsty about it, in that it plays into the idea of, do you go to church because you believe in the Lord Jesus, or do you go to church because you like being seen in church? You know, does that now I in my head, I love the idea of the progressive order of Gaia, them being the ones that really believe in the environment, but also, you know, a lot of the old Christian faiths got folded into it because it would make sense because so much
Mhm.
of the world still falls under the Abrahamic religions.
Yep.
And so,
You've
and the
actually
thing
given
about,
me, and you've unwittingly given me a task. I had originally created flags for
yeah,
the community of Gaia and the progressive order of Gaia were basically just reflections of each other. But now I'm thinking of making a new flag for the community of Gaia and using the community of Gaia flag for the progressive order of Gaia.
okay.
Because the progressive order of Gaia, the idea I had that before that I think could still work as long as we execute it properly is that the progressive order of Gaia exists in a way that it's kind of like, oh, well, we've had this hardliner ideology for 200 years and it's done its job. Now we can start to ease back a little bit. And they're sort of like, well, the 250 years of radicalism did their job, and now we can just sort of live with the benefits. But the rest of the world is like, well, if we just live with the benefits, then we'll be right back where we were. And that's kind of the threat that they use them for.
Yeah.
Which because again, the idea I had for the idea, basically the idea that I'm going for here, if I'm not making it, if I haven't made it clear, sensible yet, which I want to do as from time to time, as you know,
You're doing
is
great.
that the progressive order of Gaia is basically the idealized version of
Yeah.
the solar punk utopia that some people want, where it's like they see the future and they think, oh, we're going to be living on communal farms and we're going to be using solar and wind energy and we're not going to have nuclear and it's going to be really great. But they don't think about the fact that to create that future, we're going to have to go through some really fucking difficult stuff first. The community of Gaia is the difficult stuff first, but they never let it go because they turned it into a state religion. The progressive
Yeah.
order of Gaia has started to relax on the state religion because, as you said, they're the everybody else. They're the people who are like not run by hardcore true believers. They're kind of like the people who went off and started like and tried to form. Ironically enough, they're the people who weren't radical enough and tried to go off and form their own hippie commune where everyone is more idealistic and egalitarian.
Well, I mean, I think you could even have just people who, it doesn't even got to be like a hippie commune with peace, love, and flower. I mean, not everybody, but there will be some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just want to like open a mosque. Some people just want to like, have a church. Um, you know, I had this thought where you were talking. I'm like, oh, this is almost like the Reformation,
Mm-hmm.
where where the Protestants broke off from. I always see things I see things deeply in religion a lot, and so I kind of look back to the stories of that and see how that can reflect into the Spacer Saga. And we could, and I'm not saying we have to do this, but we could model it off of the Catholic Reformation in the 15 and
Yeah.
the 1600s, where Martin Luther nailed his 99 problems onto the. I'm getting mixed up with the Jay-Z song, I know. You get what I'm saying. He nailed the list,
Got 99 problems
and the Pope ain't one.
yeah.
Um, but um, and it's like that where you have like this, ostensibly like the church is a good thing. However, if you're burning people, maybe not that, right? Like that's a bridge too far for me.
Yeah,
Maybe don't.
basically the progressive order of guys like we let us where it's like you've seen National Treasure. I think see you think of things through the film of religion a lot. I see everything through the lens of like film and TV. And
Sure.
National Treasure, there's that line when they've like stolen the Declaration and they've got what's her face in the van with them, and
Yeah.
she's like, "I want that document, Mr. Brown." It's like my name's not Brown, it's Gates. I level with you 98% because he told her that he'd level with her 100%, and then she's like, "Well." I level with you 98%. There's a little bit I left out. The 98% that the progressive order of Gaia levels with is all of the like progressive solar punk ideology. What they don't level with is the like police state. And that's what makes them a threat to the community of Gaia. Because the thing is, the community of Gaia, because follow with me here,
I'm
as much
listening.
as it would be run by true believers, it would also be run by opportunists. There's always opportunists who find their way into the halls of power.
Yeah.
Always. Because even if 2/3 of the people who are running the show are true believers, which are probably closer to half and half, or maybe 1/3, 2/3 the other way, there would definitely be a certain population of the leadership who were cashing in on the true believers to
Yeah.
have power. And they would be the people who are like, well, we need this police state to maintain the edifice of our power. And without it, we crumble.
And these are the
So
cogs.
those are the cogs, yes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the true believers like, well, we need the edifice. We need the edifice of the police state, or else the world will collapse back into disorder, and we'll have climate catastrophe.
Sure.
And again, they feed off each other because the true believers get exploited by the opportunists,
Yeah.
and the opportunists are a convenient tool for the true believers to get stuff done.
And the progressive order of Gaia presents a convenient scapegoat for their problems
Yes.
and a counterbalance and someone to blame, or like you can set off a bomb and say it was them, or what. I don't know if you're gonna have terrorists in this world, but
Be like eco-terrorism or
eco-terrorism. But
anti-eco-terrorism.
there you go. There you go, man. We can really stretch some metaphors there. We Because yeah, there would this is a little bit Brave New World. This is a little bit 1984. Brave New World. There was that Navajo reservation in the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've read Brave New World.
No.
Okay. So in Brave New
Oh,
World, Brave
go
New
ahead. Give
World,
me.
have you seen?
I've heard of most of the tropes and stuff.
Okay, have you read 1984?
Yes, I read that in high school.
19 Brave New World is like 1984 but with acid.
Yeah, I know.
And there's one of the bigger differences is that it's it's like 1984, but if everybody was stoned off of like Xanax the whole time, or not Xanax, but you know what I mean.
There's There's a quote that I've seen make the rounds on Facebook that from like some of these like thinker pages, whatever you call them, like philosophy pages that pop up that get suggested from time to time. And one of them basically goes that Orwell feared a future where people would burn books. Huxley feared a future where people would not have reason to read books at all.
There you go. And in Brave New World, they have a Navajo reservation where it's also, Navajo, it's, Native Americans, and it's also kind of everybody else. Like it's smaller than what I have in mind for us, but you know, one of the main characters in Brave New World, you've got a white kid from London. No, his mom's from London, and then she got lost while they were touring a Navajo reservation. And then he grew up on that reservation. And this is hundreds of years in the future. And he found a copy of the complete works of Shakespeare, which is a book that had been banned by that point. And he read it. And he thought, oh my God, I'm going to London. I'm going to go see this place. And it wasn't. But the point is, there is a place for all of the people who, in the brave new world of the Spacer saga of Earth in the future, you're going to have a spot for the people that the status quo of the police state doesn't work for,
Mhm.
because the status quo either absorbs everybody, the ones the status quo can't absorb, it needs a place to shoot them off to.
It's basically, this is the answer is staring us in the face. You've
What's that?
talked about how like if you litter, you're shot in the head, or
Yeah.
like I've mentioned like, oh, if you break the rules, you're put in camp. No, you're shipped off to the progressive order of Gaia. It's an open air camp. It's basically like George Carlin's old routine about how we're going to fence off 4 states and put all of the criminals there.
Yes.
Basically, that's what it started as, and then it grew, and they let it grow because it's a convenient place for all of the ne'er do wells that don't fit into their perfect world order
Yes.
to fit.
Yes, and they love the biosphere and they're all of that. And there's Christians and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and everybody there. And everyone's got a real, we would call them environmental enthusiasts now, but to them, they just kind of grow up in its default setting.
Mhm.
They're all about the Jesus and the ecology, less about the murder.